Hello, this is Search and Replace. The walkthrough for this is going to be done without the use of string.replace. It's going to give you a better idea of all the different steps in this algorithm. For the search and replace walkthrough, you can check out version 2 of this solution, or bug me if it's not yet uploaded, since it should be, and that will give you a little trick with string.replace. But without using that method, let's start to code out all the different steps needed for this algorithm. The first thing we want to do is look through the string and find out what find a before match. Whatever this before argument is, we want to find where that is in the sentence. So let's just start with that. Sorry, my audio just accidentally paused my audio for a second. So since we are iterating through this sentence, so to speak, we are going through each word to check it's a match. The basic idea would be to use a for loop, so that's what we will do here. The first thing we'll need to do for that is change the string to an array, so I'm going to declare a variable, name it ARR for array, so it's a little more readable, and we will set that to string.split, and we are splitting on the white space in between each word, so to speak. So we have that. Now we have an array, and if we return that, you see that we get this into an array, so that's what we want right now. So from this, we will start our for loop over this array. Our basic var I equals 0, I is less than array.length, and I++. That will go through our entire array. We want to keep going until we see a match. So we want to say if the current position of the array, the current word we are looking at, is equal to before, then we have a match. And to test that, we can return that current position. And when we return inside a loop, it will break out of the entire loop, the entire if block, whatever blocks we are in. It will break out of all those different blocks until we have the actual function we are in. So that just stops everything. It's a really nice way to do, really nice technique for stopping an iteration or a loop. So if we do that, we run the challenge, we see that we have returned jumped, which, if you see here, is the word we looked for. So we are correctly getting the target word. So that's great. So since we have that, we now want to replace that word, and we can use array.splice for that. And here's a brief idea of how array.splice works. If we have this array here, and we call array.splice on it, our first argument is the index that we are starting at, so index 0, for example. And the second argument is how many times over we want to go. So if it's 0, we actually will, the 1 counts the 0, so we start index 0, we go 1, and then we go 2. It will return that section of the array, and if we look, we have removed those beginning two x's. Now we have started at O. Likewise, if we do array.splice on the end, and now bear in mind these indexes are new. Now this x right here is at index 1. So if we do array.splice there and no argument, it will start from the index we give and just keep going to the very end. Splice all that out. So it took the end two x's in this case, and now our array is mutated to just a 0. We can use this idea for basically bringing these two sentences together. We want to take everything before this RFI here we want to keep, and everything after it we want to keep. So I'm going to make two variables here, start, as in the start of the sentence, and that is going to be our spliced array. Remember, this array is the entire sentence. So this is our spliced array from the beginning, and we will move over I times. And this will actually splice out all of the array except right up to the word we are going to replace. So this gets preserved in our start variable, and now our array is starting at the word we are going to replace. So then thinking of after that, we want to then add on the rest of the sentence. So we will do the same thing with end. Now remember, this array has been slightly changed. We no longer have this beginning because that exists in start. So end, the array right here, is, and actually let me actually show you that. So if we return the array right there, you see we have jumped over the lazy dog. We had a quick brown fox, and if we console log, can we console log? I don't even remember. Console log won't show up there, but as you can see, we start at the end here. So we are starting at the word that we are replacing. So I'm just going to leave that out for now and make our end array.splice start at the first index, start at this over here, and leave the rest out so it takes the rest of the sentence and puts it into the end. So if I returned end here, for example, over the lazy dog, that's the rest of the sentence we will eventually bring back. So then we have a start and an end and a little hole in the middle, which we will then use with, we will replace it with after. So I'm going to use another method to join all these arrays together, and it's called array.concat. And it will start somewhere. It will start with our start array, for example. And if we do start.concat and add more arguments, whether it's just a primitive like a string here or an array, it will put each of those into just one singular array. So if I do that, this entire thing is brought together into one sentence, which is exactly what we need to do here. So I'm going to make another variable called new array, and that's going to be equal to start.concat. Whatever array you call concat on, it will return this array first plus whatever is in here. So we will then use our afterword and then our end. And then from here we can return new array.join, or new array.join, separating each index with a space so it brings it back into the sentence. We can actually get rid of this return completely. And if we run it, we've passed a few tests, but we have not yet passed these ones where we need to preserve the case. So let's look at that a bit. We need to preserve the case of the original word. So this is the word that we need to compare. In this if loop, in this if block, we will, for readability, I will declare a variable. I will call it word to replace. And that's the index of the word we are, well, replacing. So we want to check if it's an uppercase. We have the method on a string to uppercase. So we can actually compare an uppercased copy of that word to the actual word. And if the word we are looking at also has an uppercase, it will be a match. Otherwise it won't be. Let me show you what I mean by that. And I'll show you what I mean by that in another video since I am approaching my recording limit. Okay, picking up where we left off, we are comparing cases. So we want to compare word to replace. And we want to get only the first character. In this test, it doesn't give us anything very tricky with different random upper and lower cases in the string. It just wants to see if we can preserve the first character. So if we use our substr method on our string, we can specify the index we want to start at, which is index 0, the first letter, and how many characters from that index, which is just 1. So this means just the first letter. And we are going to compare it to the first letter again, but also chain on to uppercase on it. So, if there was a capital U at the beginning, it would just take a capital U here, and then it would compare it to a capital U, invoke to uppercase on it, it's still a capital U, we get an equals, we know it's uppercase. So, we just put that in our if statement, and make a note that it's uppercase. If not, we will go with the lowercase method. Now, if you think about it, since we are using the after argument here is what we are going to be replacing with, that's what we need to change to make sure it conforms to the word it is replacing. So the uppercase right here, we can kind of go in our same fashion. We can just ensure that after is indeed a uppercase letter by assigning it to after dot substring of the first letter. We take the first letter of after, whether it is at an uppercase or not, we do that for good measure to make sure it is, so it conforms with the word that we are replacing, which is uppercase if we are in this block. And then we need to add the rest of the word onto it. So we do after again, substring. We start at index 1 and go all the way to the end because there is no other argument. Remember, this is index 0, it goes over 1, and then this starts at index 1 and goes to the end. And what I mean by 0 over 1, like it starts at 0 and just moves, it includes only that 0th element. So it's a little confusing there, but realize that if we did this, it actually would return nothing. It might return undefined, I don't quite remember, but that only returns one character, the 0th index. So this takes the first letter, makes sure it's capitalized, keeps the rest of the word, and that will resolve our uppercase cases. For the lowercase, we do the same exact thing. After equals after dot substring 0, 1, but this time we will invoke to lowercase on it to make sure that the word we are replacing does match the lowercase scenario. The rest of the word, once again, is exactly as it needs to be. So now we have this in here, the after will be properly modified if it is different than the case to solve these sleeping. It will make sleeping into sitting, it'll uppercase that, and we'll do it there. Let's give it a run, cross our fingers. There is no spoon. I do not get that reference, but hey, we solved it, and that is what's most important. We got our little point for Free Code Camp. Let me know, as always, if something doesn't make sense or needs to be explained further, and keep on keeping on.